Get ready before life happens. The podcast helping you navigate life's what ifs.
Welcome to the Before Life Happens podcast, helping you navigate life's biggest what ifs and exploring how we can use money as a force for good. I'm your host, Tony Stewart. In this episode, I'm glad to be joined today by Shannon Ryan, financial literacy advocate and author of Your Money Has Feelings. Shannon, welcome to the podcast. Great to have you here today.
Hi, Tony. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
I am as well. So, let's talk a little bit about what is your origin story and how did it lead you to realize that money is as much about emotions as it is about numbers?
Yeah. Thank you, Tony. I have been fascinated with money and why people do what they do with their money since I've been 13 years old. I remember being out on a walk with my dad after dinner one night, and we were in our neighborhood, and there was a house that was being built, and it was a grand house. And I was positive whoever was building was the richest man in the city. And he was friends with my dad, and my dad stopped to say hi because he was walking the house. And I remember standing there thinking, "Oh, come on, I want to keep walking." But I was looking down, and he had tennis shoes on, and there was mold growing around the edge of the tennis shoes. And so when we walked away, I looked at my dad and said, I think he's very wealthy. Look at this house that he's building. Why does he have mold on his shoes? Because, of course, I was 13 and I love shoes.
Mhm.
Why would you have moldy shoes if you had a lot of money? And what my father said to me was really the catalyst that got me to start thinking about people and their money. He said, Shannon, he said, he has plenty of resources, but those shoes serve him well. And he's on a work site. He's not putting those shoes on to impress you or anyone else. They're exactly what he needs for the situation he's in. And to me, as a 13-year-old, it got me curious as to why people do what they do with their money and why do so many people try to impress other people with their money. And it's led to a lifetime of curiosity. I have been in the financial services now for over 30 years, and I have seen a lot of change over the years. When I first started, it was a lot about trading stocks and bonds, and yet I was always more that CFP, the comprehensive planner that was interested in the whole person. And that's how I have run my practice. And I've had the privilege of sitting with real people, not just writing about it, but sitting with real people day in and day out for over 30 years. I've got 3 clients this afternoon. So that's who I am, and why the behavioral side is so important and interesting to me.
Yeah, well, I love that. And immediately I thought of Warren Buffett
Mhm.
and how he's lived in the same house
Yeah.
since what I think 1958,
Yeah.
5-bedroom home where he
Mhm.
could probably afford to upgrade if he wanted.
Maybe.
But, it
Yeah.
shows that, for him, and he said exactly what your dad said is his home serves his purposes.
Yep.
And so he doesn't need a bigger home. He doesn't need to impress anyone.
Mhm.
And so I do find that incredibly powerful.
Yeah, it is. It is.
So, let's talk about your book. Is what inspired you to write Your Money Has Feelings? Because, writing a book is a lot.
It is. Yeah. So your money has feelings. Obviously, money has no feelings. It's paper. It's our reaction to money, our with money that has feelings. The reason why I wrote the book, I've been working on financial literacy for a little over 10 years now, in addition to my wealth practice. And I started with children's books when my kids were quite young, trying to introduce concepts, basic concepts to kids starting around 2 or 3 years of age. But the reason why this book came to fruition is I did a TEDx talk about 3 years ago, and I was talking about the impact of financial wounds and scar tissue on our money and how it prevents people from finding real financial success. The response to that TED talk was so overwhelming. TEDx is kind of the son of the larger TED talk. And so my TED got talk X Talk, got pulled up to Big Ted for a couple days. And
Oh,
the
wow.
response was so positive that I thought, wow, I need to elaborate on these 30 years of experience a little bit more than that 15 minutes I did in my TEDx. And I felt that if I did so, I may be able to use my knowledge and experience of behavioral finance in real time to have a broader impact. And that's why I wrote Your Money Has Feelings.
Well, that's cool. So, just tell us a little bit about what is behavioral finance for members of the audience who aren't familiar
Yeah.
with the concept.
So when we think about finance, I think often we think of it as traditional finance. And traditional finance is the logical side of money where there are rules. You buy, you sell a stock, you have bonds, you have a cash reserve, you stay out of debt, you use your 401k. It's very logical. And most people ironically think when it comes to money that they're always being logical because we don't want to think that we're emotional beings in money. But the
Hmm.
reality is, and this is what behavioral finance addresses, is that we all bring our experiences, our habits, and our feelings to our money, whether we're aware of it or not. And heightening our awareness of our own experiences, wounds with our traditional decisions around money creates better decision making in the end.
Yeah, I completely agree. Is in my experience, I realize that the facts and figures rarely had anything to do with the decision making that clients had. There would be some things where I'd go, "This is such clear as anything," and the clients would decide completely opposite, and you go, "What are you thinking?" And so,
Yeah.
that really got me on the same track. I had a lot of psychology and philosophy classes in college because
Yeah.
that side of things always interested me. And so, I started thinking about like the same thing. It's like, okay, well, why are clients making these decisions? Because the logic, smart people, informed people,
Yes.
and so yet they're still making the decision. So there's something else that's driving it. So I love this aspect. And, we were talking pre-show that this is the future of money. And the advisors who are thinking about this and the insurance agents who are thinking about this are the ones who are going to continue to thrive. So let's go a little bit deeper on financial wounds. How
Mhm.
can someone start uncovering their hidden money beliefs or financial wounds?
Yeah. So what is a financial wound? I would define a financial wound as a experience that you've had with money. Often it's remembering your parents fighting over money. It's a divorce, it's losing a job, it's being hungry, not having enough, or simply not having the cool clothes or the cool shoes to fit in when you were in school. And it leaves what I call scar tissue. Very similar to when we have a flesh wound and it heals, and there's that little rougher skin that sometimes left scar tissue. Most of the time, we don't even know that the scar tissue is still there and inside of us until we have a reaction to money. So, for example, I was meeting with a client yesterday and she was telling me that she has this trip that she wants to go on and that she put her deposit down and Tony, she can absolutely afford it. This is part of her plan. And she said, Shannon, I've been sick to my stomach since I put the money down. I don't know if I can do this. And I started asking her questions. I said, help me understand. You can afford it. You're not costing yourself anything else. Why are you having such a bad response? Do you think it's the wrong trip? She said, no, I'm having a tough response because my parents would think this is so wasteful. We were so poor growing up that I don't know if I can actually do this. So her scar tissue was having an impact on something that she could have financially afford to do. So rather than finding joy in something that she could afford to do, her wound and the memory of that wound, the scar tissue, was impacting her feeling about spending the money.
Yeah, well, I can completely identify as, my grandparents went bankrupt in the Great Depression.
Mm,
And so, I know that story
yeah,
from my grandparents. So it's like that is my biggest fear is that no matter how well we do financially, how much we save, is it going to be enough? Is
yeah,
everything going to collapse? And
yeah,
so, I know that's my money wound, and it's can be completely irrational.
yeah,
So, how do you recommend people deal with that irrationality?
yeah.
Uh,
There's So here's what we need to establish. Life is uncertain, Tony. It will always be uncertain. And then we carry these wounds around. My husband grew up incredibly poor, and so he has all those wounds as well and has a hard time spending money at times. And so the way that we work with that woundedness to keep us moving forward is really twofold. And you actually do this work with your new book, which I love, is the first thing is we need to identify what's most important to us. So we all have a certain amount of money that flows through our hands, and we all have different income levels. And there are people in the world that have so little and live in such deep poverty, they will never be able to make a decision on discretionary money. But the rest of us do. And that money flows through our hands at different income levels. And we all have different income levels, and we make decisions on that money so often that money will flow through our hands and we will say, well, I don't have enough. I can't do the things that I want. But we spend money on things that don't matter to us because we're not completely clear on what we really want for ourselves. So the first step, whether it's your 52 weeks of going through your goals and really understanding what you want, and this is a hard exercise. And I think that's one of the reasons why you wrote your book. It's a hard exercise to fully align yourself with what you want and then to take your money and align it with that. So the first step is understanding what's flowing through your hands, what you really want financially, and then make decisions to align it. It may be downsizing a house, getting a different car. Sometimes we've put ourselves in financial positions where we have this scarcity mentality, and yet we have the abundance to do the things we want to do, but we've narrowed that by decisions. And sometimes decisions that are driven by society's expectations, or parents' expectations, or our own fear that if I don't get it now, I'll never have it. So the steps would be first, you have to know what you want because you're not going to know if you got it unless you know what you want. And then utilizing an understanding of your resources and aligning it, and then creating a financial plan to track it.
yeah, well, I love that. And I think, as you mentioned, that is one of the biggest challenges is aligning yourself with your goals, also your values.
Yeah.
I think is really important because we are told, like, maybe we're yelled at by Dave Ramsey about having too much debt or,
Yeah.
or whatever,
Yeah.
that you can't have that daily coffee. That is something that absolutely drives me crazy is like,
I
if
agree.
you like coffee, go for it. If you're,
Yeah.
save 1% on your investments and
I
your
agree.
mutual funds, that will more than offset your daily coffee and you'll have your daily coffee. So,
Yeah,
and
I
that's
agree. So there are several, and I think of it as a little bit more old school, Tony. So hopefully we're a little bit more new school. There's a whole group of financial authors and speakers that for years have shamed us about it's your daily cup of coffee that is making you go broke, or you can't do the things that you want to do. And you bought what? Why? That's a waste. It's not their decision to make what brings you joy and what's the alignment of your money. But we do need to understand the resources that we have. I have had clients that have been incredibly successful financially on very low incomes because they knew how to handle their income. The problem is that we as a society judge people by saying, Tony, you're so successful. And if I say that, people are assuming, oh, Tony must have a lot of money. And we put people on pedestals that have earned a lot of money or done other things and we call them successful without examining the quality of their lives. You can have an incredibly successful financial life on many incomes as long as that alignment is happening.
Yeah, well, immediately I think of the fire movement because the fire movement has reached a point where many people have reached fire,
Yes,
which is financial independence, retire
yes,
early for people who aren't familiar with the movement.
yes.
And a lot of them are not happy
I know.
and wish they had done it differently. I mean, have you put
Yeah.
much, have you talked about that or anything?
Yeah, you know what's so interesting is, and I've had the privilege, I was saying earlier, for 30 years, I've had the privilege of sitting across the table from real people. There's a lot of people out there that are talking about money, and I know you've worked with people for years too, Tony, but for those of us who've had the privilege of being trusted with the emotions, the raw desire, the raw frustration that money has one-on-one and allowed us to help guide them through, you learn so much about human beings. And I've retired thousands of people. And so for long, there was this fire movement. This was, if I retire in my 50s, then I'm successful. And what I've found is often that is a success marker that people will care. Like I retired at 55, I retired at 45, I retired at 40. And yet they didn't retire to anything. And life is more than just about money. You may have had enough resources where you could live and live the life that you determined that you wanted. But life's more than just about that money. It's also about, are we continuing to be productive? Are we giving our value into the world? Do we feel like that we're connected to the world? And it's so retirement and being retired or independently wealthy is more than just about I had enough to do it. It's what were you retiring to? So money has a lot more to it than just, it's not just math. The math could work for you to retire, but I find so many people who retired early. And early, I mean, frankly, 50s and 60s. We're living a long time now, and people retire. And I've got clients that are 67, 68, 70 saying, why did I retire? I have so much left to give. I don't feel like I am contributing any longer. And I think it misleads us.
100%. Actually, I just saw a post this morning from a friend of mine on LinkedIn, and it was about how many people are starting new businesses between ages of 70 and 79.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
it's really amazing. And I think it's part of what you're talking about, but part of, a lot of this is I wrote this stems from the Great Depression,
Yeah.
in the New Deal when people lived to age 67 or
Yeah.
68 and
True.
they did physical labor. And so it was a completely different scenario where now, like you said, a lot of us are going to live into our 90s
Yeah.
and we're going to be healthy in our 80s.
Yes.
So
Vibrant, hopefully.
exactly. So, or as my friend Kina, I don't know if you know Kina Pettyjohn, the
I
sassy
don't.
septuagenarian.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, wow.
um, you can stay healthy and you can stay productive. So, one of the things that we talked about pre-show that I think we should talk about
Mhm.
is women finding success in financial services and maybe even getting more women interested in
Mhm.
financial services. I mean,
Mhm.
you're involved with CFP board,
Yep.
only 30% of CFPs are women
Yes.
and 1% are Black women, and you can look at
Yes.
all these
Yeah.
statistics. So, do you have any thoughts you can share with the audience
Oh,
on that
Tony, I
or
have
somewhere to
so
go?
many thoughts. I actually, I'm a CFP. I also teach the CHFC and the CFP with the American College, and my classes are typically mainly men still, and mainly white men. And we're starting to see more and more women. 30 years ago, when I started in financial services as a woman, I was one of two women out of a class of almost 40 that started. And
Oh, wow.
I remember, kind of armoring up. I have a master's, a financial master's in financial planning, and I had all of these, letters after my name because I felt like I had to keep getting education. Um, because there were so few women, I had to be the best that I could possibly be. And I feel that it was the best decision I ever made. It is an incredible industry for women. And I think women and diverse communities need to see themselves reflected in their financial advisors. It's not critical. There's plenty of women who love to work with men and, men that work with women. But it's really important, especially as in our society today, to have the diversity involved. In addition to that, you've got such a huge transfer of wealth right now happening from the baby boomers to women. The women are going to control the majority of the money in at least the United States in the next 10 years because of the baby boomers aging and dying, and women are still outliving men. So it's really important for women and diverse communities to get involved in financial services. But I'll tell you, it's hard. And I'll tell you why it's hard. It's hard because it is a tough industry for those of us that are different, women or diverse. And I had a lot of early on, a lot of discrimination, and people, I've had clients say, why, or potential clients say, I don't know if I could work with you, you're a woman, meaning
Wow.
that I don't know what I'm doing. And what I have learned over 30 years, and I have a thriving practice, is I can just be me and do my best work in the world. And as we grow this diverse population in the financial services, we serve a broader audience. And that's what's key, because all boats rise. If we can get all of the communities, everyone served, we all get better as a society because of the education.
Yeah, I love that is, I think, from so many guests that I've talked about is being authentic and being yourself is a key
Yeah.
to success, not just as an advisor, but as a person.
Yeah.
Um, that it's incredible. And I think the other thing is the statistics show that 70 to 80% plus of widows will go leave their current financial planner. Stats show the same for divorcees.
Mhm.
And I think for a lot of those reasons, from the women that I've had on the show, is that they don't feel seen or heard by their current financial advisors. So, I think that's a big lesson as well, is that as a financial advisor, if you want to retain your female clients, you actually need to talk to them.
Yeah.
I mean, what's your experience there?
Yeah, it's interesting. You're starting to see a lot of the big firms actively. As a woman CFP, I get probably 4 or 5 recruiting calls a day from other firms because all the firms are realizing they really missed the mark by not having more gender diversity in their ranks. But and to be very candid, um, it was so hard at times as a woman to be in the financial field. And with some of the discrimination that I experienced, I had men walk in my office and tell me, other advisors, that especially after I had children, I can't believe you're here. What's wrong with you? You're hurting your children. So it was a tough field for a
Wow.
lot of years. And I'm so grateful that I endured. It has been the best field I could be in. And it has changed. Tony, it has changed. I'm sure you've seen that too on the insurance side. I mean, talk about a good old boys club. I mean, you were in it. You saw that as well. But there's some phenomenal men as well. It's not all everybody. And so the more we make the industry authentic and welcoming and accepting of all people, genders, and diversity backgrounds, then we will serve our communities better. And again, we'll all benefit from it.
Yeah, I love that. And I think you're right is, well, I know you're right, is thinking back on some of the groups I was aligned with, like I was aligned with in this organization, leading life insurance producers in Northern
Mhm.
California. I mean,
Yeah.
quite a mouthful. And now
Yeah,
I'm thinking back, is it was pretty much all men.
it was.
And,
It was.
so many of the associations and groups, I was involved with the Society of Financial Service Professionals, with their old name and the American Society of CLU and CHFC,
Yeah.
and that was all men.
Yeah.
So it's like it is, and it's so to me, it's always just been plain out stupid because 50% of the population are women. So it's like,
Yeah.
so before we get into the closing questions, is one of the things is that I've heard, and I'm sure you've heard people say that strikes me as incredibly strange is how do you talk to women? And My
Yeah,
thing is like, okay, well, you're probably married. You had
yeah,
a mother.
yeah.
You may have sisters, you've got female friends. So, but, why is that? And what advice would you give to somebody
Yeah.
who's thinking like, okay, well, how do I talk to a woman?
So let's be fair. A lot of women aren't even interested in talking about finance because we weren't socially brought up to do so. Many of us were told we weren't good at math. Not true. Finance necessarily isn't math. I mean, it's there's a lot more to it. And so a lot of women have abdicated that to fathers, to husbands, to others. And many of those partners wanted their spouse to be more involved. Even my own sister once said, ignorance is bliss. I don't want to be involved. So there's a reason why male financial advisors over the years have gotten so comfortable talking to men, and it's hard to talk to women. The bottom line, whether you're talking to men or you're talking to women, is that we as advisors need to continue to seek to understand what's most important to you about money. And when you're asking the question, you don't just look at the male in the room, you look at the female in the room as well. And then if the male answers, then you ask the female. And so it's a practice, and I think it can be very uncomfortable for men in the beginning because if you've only talked to men because they're the only ones coming in for the meetings, it is a transition, but it's a worthy transition because I do think I have known, and I still know today, some outstanding financial advisors that are men, and that I would absolutely trust my daughters and my husband. My partner is a man. I hope and know he'll take good care of everybody if something happens to me. But so it's not the male, it's the male that has only been working with males that makes it really difficult to have that conversation. But if we can cross that line, those financial advisors have a better chance at keeping those women during that transition. So if you are uncomfortable, do it anyways, and do it because it's good business. Because if something happens to the male partner first, you have a really good chance. Women are very loyal. They'll stay with you if you have listened to them and ask them how they feel. And so it's worth really investing. It's not only the right thing to do, but it's a great business decision.
Yeah, I completely agree because, if we look at the stats that we talked about earlier, women are going to outlive men,
Yeah.
uh, and by a significant mile. So it's
Yep.
it's kind of silly to overlook the women. And the other thing that I noticed in my career is that both spouses are usually involved in the financial decision, even if the woman doesn't seem
Yeah.
like she's as involved, is that quite often it's a joint decision. So, understanding that is a great way to be more successful. And as you point out, to better serve your clients,
Yeah.
to serve their
Yeah.
needs.
I think people are surprised at how I actually think there are more women running the household finances that a lot of advisors are aware of. And then they'll only meet with one of the spouses just to learn that they didn't get a deal, or they were talking about disability insurance or long-term care or something else. And if the other spouse wasn't involved, that piece of insurance or risk protection doesn't get sold because you get home and there's a price to it and it wasn't explained properly. So again, it's good business, but I think we have underestimated as an advisors how much both spouses are involved. I've got to, as a woman, be careful not, just to talk to the women. I got to make sure that I'm talking to the men too, meaning it should be a balanced conversation as much as we can. We all come across those clients. They're like, my husband's not interested, just meet with me, or my wife's not interested, just meet with me. But I really try to avoid that because it should be a partnership, if there is a partnership there.
Exactly. Well, my wife actually is not interested in the money
Yeah.
aspect. And I'm like, no, you need to be.
Yeah.
And so what we do is she's not always into it, but we have, every so often financial meetings where I report to her
Yep.
and go through everything because it's important because the odds are she's going to outlive me. And so you know, whether she wants to take it on or
I
not,
know. Yep.
it's important. And it's something, it's a legacy you're leaving for your clients because the woman may predecease the man is we're looking at statistics.
Mhm.
but it is possible that it's going to be the other way around. And
Yes.
as you point out, it's not always readily apparent who's making the
Mm-mm.
decisions, or sometimes they're split
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's shifting.
It's
So
interesting.
that's
No, it's my husband, and I'll tell you, my husband is because I do all the investing for obvious reasons. He runs kind of the household stuff. I sit him down once a year to say, here's everything you own, and here's where it's at, and why I've purchased what I've purchased, and why we're invested the way we are. Transparency among partners is incredibly important, and we get in trouble where there isn't transparency, meaning that you start to get power sometimes involved in many, and dishonesty if we're not being completely transparent. So both women and men, and I have several clients now where the husband's the stay-at-home and the wife is working full-time. So some of those traditional roles are starting to change a little bit. So transparency in a marriage is one of the ways financially that you keep marriages strong, because money is one of the number one issues inside of marriage, because we bring our different scar tissue to the party. And so that's where money becomes a power struggle at times. And so having both spouses involved, even the one that may not be really excited about the whole topic, is really important.
definitely. And I want to bring up something for
Mhm.
financial planners
Yeah.
who are watching and listening is financial abuse is a precursor to physical domestic abuse. So, as a financial planner, it's something I did an episode on it. Unfortunately, the name of my guest is escaping. So, for people watching and listening,
Oh,
I'll find that
awesome.
episode and put that in the show notes because this is an incredibly important consideration. Is that if you're seeing that with your clients, is one client controlling the money, controlling that relationship is,
Mhm.
I mean, we're not mandatory reporters, but, there are, you know, things that you can do hopefully to help your clients and to
Yeah,
help, because unfortunately it's usually men controlling women, although there are situations where women do the same thing to men. So
there are.
it's something to look for.
It is. I've also had a couple situations recently with second marriages, third marriages, where one of the spouses, typically a man, has said, "Oh no, I switched my pension over to you because only a spouse could get the pension, or I have enough life insurance, or I provided you and you've got mixed families," just to have that person die and to realize that everything he said that he had done to take care of a spouse he's asked to, be a stay-at-home, wasn't present, and the partner never looked into it to see if it had been done. So it's a big topic. Financial control and power, is a big topic.
Definitely, definitely. So, on that cheery note, so I will
Yeah.
put the link to that
Mm.
episode in the show notes. Is let's get into the Get Ready Hot Take Trio. These are three quick
Oh,
questions I ask all of my guests.
okay.
The first one is, what money myth are you trying to break?
I am trying to break the myth that money is always logical.
I love it. Money is not always logical. So, Shannon, let's get out the time machine for a minute.
Okay.
If you go back in time, knowing what you know now about money, what would you tell your younger self?
To drop the armor. You were right. Money is emotional. It's not just about the investments. And start on the behavioral side earlier. Have confidence. You're seeing what you're really seeing.
I love that. And I think that's something I've heard from a lot of women
Mhm.
on the show and from female clients is that there's a confidence issue.
Yes.
And so I think it's, as you said, is to be confident
Yeah.
in yourself, in your decisions, in your abilities. And so that's wonderful advice. So to close out, what is your number one tip for changing how we think about money?
The number one tip is really knowing what you want for yourself, and being true to allowing yourself to say and to write down what you want, not what somebody else wants, and then aligning that with your resources.
I love that is keep track of your own goals and what you want to achieve, because I think, and you talked about this earlier in the show, is that we so often get caught up in what other people want in their goals
Mhm.
instead of thinking about where we want to go and then making
Exactly.
sure we're able to get there. So,
Exactly.
Yeah. So Shannon, where can people learn more about you, and most importantly, where can they pick up a copy of your Money Has Feelings?
Oh, thank you. We're available just about everywhere books are sold, but if you go to my website, Shannon, SHANNON dash Ryan, RYAN.com, all my resources are there. The TEDx talk that I talked about, past videos I've done, lots of blogs and vlogs. So there's lots of free resources as well as links to all the places you can purchase the book.
Awesome, awesome. And for everybody watching and listening who has access to the show notes, all those links will be in the show notes. Shannon, thanks for coming on the podcast today.
Great conversation, Tony. I could have talked to you all day. Thank you for the work you were doing. It was a privilege to be on the show today.
Well, I appreciate all the work you're doing as well. And for everybody watching and listening, there will definitely be a link to Shannon's TEDx talk, which I highly recommend you check out. And thank you always for tuning into this episode of the Before Life Happens podcast. If you learned something today, change the way you think about money and your financial journey, please be sure to subscribe and to share with a friend. You can also go to my website at tonystewart.com to join the Get Ready movement and receive my newsletter. Until next time, let's change the way we think about money.